Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. I'm Michele Goetz, VP and Principal Analyst at Forrester Research, a leading global market research company that helps organizations exceed customer demands and excel with technology. I'm going to be your host today, and I have two very distinguished speakers and leaders with me who specialize in the area that's most pertinent for today's business environment, and that's supply chain and artificial intelligence. I'm pleased to welcome Kapil Dabi, SVP of Connected Commerce at Signet Jewelers, the world's largest retailer of diamond jewelry, near and dear to my heart, and Majaz Mohammed, Senior Director of Supply Chain Management at Tredence, and they're a global leader in AI and data science solutions. So today we're presenting a sneak peek of the future of what we're calling connected intelligence for supply chain in particular. And if you have any questions during the webinar, please type them into the chat window and we will address them for you. Now, without further ado, let's kind of jump into the conversation and the discussion a bit. We know that boardrooms and newsrooms have devoted a significant amount of attention to supply chain over the past 2 years. And global organizations have encountered some pretty serious supply chain challenges and are unable frequently to meet those customer demands and in particular do so in a timely manner. So our recent supply chain disruptions have led to a sudden surge in the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning, and the investment is particularly strong around retailers and manufacturers. So, consequently, retailers are left with silos of data due to impulsive investments and long-term data and AI strategies that might be out of sync or not existent. And so in order to respond and adapt to these market disruptions and changes, supply chains are really required to operate in a much more near or real-time type of scenario, particularly around sharing data and sharing insights across those organizations. So I think really the big question we're here to answer today is how can organizations maximize returns and make the supply chain responsive and, more importantly, resilient? Not just to get us out of the past 2 years, but to keep us moving forward in the next 2 years and then some. So we kind of have an answer that we're going to go over. We're going to talk about the solution being connected intelligence. And I really want to turn to our speakers right now and hear from them and get their take on the shifting role of connected intelligence and how that's affecting the improvement in managing supply risk and efficacy. So first question, Kapil, I'm going to start with you. What are these trends going on in supply chain in the market right now? And, particularly for retailers and what's Signet Jewelers doing?
Yeah, that's a great question, Michele. So first thing is the jewelry industry is going through a perfect storm of challenges, with record inflation, low consumer index, supply chain disruptions, Ukraine war, you name it, and pretty much we are in the perfect storm right now. There are two things which has happened during the pandemic. The first is the growth of e-commerce. And as pandemic is closing down, we are also seeing the stores are coming back. So I think we are seeing growth of connected commerce. 72% of our consumers actually start their journey online. And then 50% of those things consummate the journey at the store. So they actually convert into a purchase. So connected commerce for us is one of the trends which we're seeing, which is a growth. And in order to support the connected commerce, what we have realized to support that consumer who is extremely flexible, who's looking for convenience, who's looking for the most cost-efficient way, we have to react. So we have to bring the product whenever, wherever, however, to them. And for that, connected intelligence is actually one of the key solutions which we're driving. So having that intelligence between the entire network, how the silos are talking to each other, how do we talk and bring that product forward in the best possible experience is one of the trends, but then how we are reacting to the market. The second thing we're also seeing is the proliferation of delivery options. As consumers are becoming more intelligent and more educated, I think they're looking for retailers to be more flexible. They are looking for more convenience, more delivery options. So one of the things which we did at Signet was launch connected commerce capabilities like buy online, pick up in store, ship from store, ship to store, curbside pickup, and a lot of these connected commerce capabilities now cater to 20% of our e-commerce orders. So we have grown significantly in this space, so great momentum there. And for that also, to get that precision and that connected intelligence is super critical, because now we are serving the consumers, which is the connected consumers between e-commerce and the store. So again, the growth of connected intelligence is super critical, and that is something which we have done. We have utilized our partner Tredence's unique control tower solution to get that end-to-end visibility and track and trace to support our connected commerce growth.
Yeah. So you set a very high bar over the last 2 years with customers, and they liked it so much, you have to keep it up and you have to do better. That's essentially what it is. Exactly. You can't turn and have a conversation anywhere in the market right now without, hearing what's going on in the market, and, maybe there's concerns about inflation and recession talk and where that's going. And so, companies are also looking at things like cost cutting as well. Is Signet affected by this at all? And if so, how are you reacting to it?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Michelle. Signet is focused on sustainable top-line growth. One good thing about us is we are a house of banners. We have close to about 11 banners, each catering to a different customer segment and a different customer persona. So one data point which I wanted to share was our high-income consumers, spenders making more than 100K a year, their annual spending with Signet has actually grown by 20%. But our low-end consumers, their spending with us has actually dropped by 1%. So in summary, what we're saying is, how do you react to some of these changing consumer behavior? And we are using cutting edge data and analytics and insights coming out of that to basically adjust to products, a price, a promotion. So net, I think that again, that whole concept of connected intelligence basically plays into the mix of how we react to the changing consumer behavior. Now, one thing internally which we have also seen is that one of the most overlooked driver is the talent and the mindset which is shifting with how their companies are reacting. So with this changing behavior of the consumer, we have to be more resilient, we have to be more flexible, we have to be more agile. So we are actually cross-skilling our labor force, who then brings the data mindset, who brings the insight mindset, and overall our entire organization, we are trying to change it so that we are more consumer back, digital first, and insights driven. And for that, again, I would say connected intelligence is a key part of changing our own behavior within the organization, how we react to our consumers.
So it's really taking advantage of connected intelligence in such a way that you can balance your risk and reward through agility between those diverse areas. And then it's also providing, a perspective that you didn't have before, with the right data, with the right insights, and doing that quickly to respond quickly rather than just working off of spreadsheets and forecasts anymore. Yeah, no, it's fascinating. So you spoke about, sort of that AI intelligence, and Tredence is certainly helping you with that. So Majaz, let me turn to you. What is connected intelligence, and what is the pressing need for it, and why is AI such an integral part of that?
Great question, Michelle. I think in the introduction, you kind of nailed it when you said there's a lot of talk about supply chain, especially recently after the pandemic, and a lot of investment has gone into digital supply chain. And what many companies have done as part of this digital supply chain is upgrade their siloed softwares, right? So some people are upgrading their planning systems, some are upgrading TMS, WMS, etc., right? And these are long implementations. They go on for 2-3 years. At the end of these 2-3 years, what's going to happen is companies are going to end up with these mosaic of siloed systems, which are world-class in their own sense. They're using AI and ML models. They're generating a lot of data, but they are operating within their silo. They optimize within the silo. Now, if you look at the business needs, like Kapil has said, there is a need for connected commerce. There is a need for supply chain being extremely flexible. So ending up with these world-class siloed systems and this business need, there is a gap here, right? And that's where connected intelligence comes in. And connected intelligence is a mechanism right? Where you're looking at data across each one of these silos, detecting any kind of anomalies, right? And reacting to those. Now this can be done manually or it can be done using a machine. And when you do it manually, obviously you have to deploy an army of people. They're extracting data manually from each one of these siloed systems, stitching it together manually, and coming up with detecting the anomalies and reacting to it. Obviously, there will be a lag when you do that, a time lag, right? So you cannot react in real time. So that's where the machine comes in, right? Where it's automatically sitting on top of your existing systems, orchestrating across all of these systems in real time. It's detecting and responding to it. To give you a quick example, imagine shipment from a supplier that gets delayed, right? A lot of companies today don't even have the mechanism to detect that the shipment has been delayed. Right? But companies that have this mechanism, their sourcing or procurement team gets informed that the shipment is delayed. But because they're so siloed, the people in procurement don't know what to do with that information, right? They don't inform the customer service or the order management folks to determine which customer orders are getting impacted because of this delay. So that information is not used properly. So that's where a system like Connected Intelligence detects this delay in real time, determines which customer orders are getting impacted, and it comes up with mitigation, right? Mitigation mechanism. So maybe if this particular item, is there a local supplier that you can pay a little bit more and get it, right? And still send it to the customer on time? Is there the same item sitting somewhere else in your network? Can you get that and ship to the customer, right? Or at the least, inform the customer in advance that there is a delay that's happening, right? Or maybe you can borrow from like a lower priority customer, give it to a higher priority customer. So that way, a connected intelligence helps. So a quick example in that sense. So that is a connected intelligence systems, an AI ML system that's orchestrating across all your existing systems.
Yeah. So AI is working to overcome a lot of the barriers of the silos that we've had forever and ever. Finally, we have something with that. And by doing so, that orchestration is really interesting because not only is it creating connections that we want, but it also seems like it is overcoming the speed barrier so that and the volume too. There's lots of transactions, there's lots of orders that you have to handle. And if it's bottlenecked, it's AI that's figuring out how do you prioritize, what's the response, how do you handle customers that are waiting for their things, and they're getting frustrated. They want their goods, they want their diamonds. Okay, so let's back up a little bit because that feels a little far-fetched. We've been trying to do this for years, decades now. Isn't that what the promise of artificial intelligence has been all the way back to the 40s when it was envisioned? So does it work? Like, how do you do this? What's easy? What's hard about it?
Great question, Michelle, first of all. So recently I was reading a McKinsey report, right? And they said for a company that is $10 billion in revenue, a system like Connected Intelligence, which they call as the supply chain nerve center, would boost their earnings by up to 2%, will boost their revenues by up to $150 million, and reduce their cost by $50 million. So first of all, there is a business case for doing something like this. Secondly, there is a need, right? Especially in light of recent disruptions that have been happening in supply chain and the proliferation of demands from the customers, right? The options that the customers are demanding. You need your end-to-end supply chain to be very responsive. So in light of these, it's not just a far-fetched vision, it's a reality, it's a need that businesses need to start working on today. But it's not easy, like you said. We have been trying to do this for decades, right? Breaking down silos is not easy. But we can get started on this journey in a step-by-step fashion. And we are helping retailers like Signet do that, right? So, and the way we do it is not an implementation that goes on for like 2 years, 3 years, and then you see value at the end of those 3 years. What we do is do it step by step in an agile fashion so that you start seeing value within a matter of few weeks. Right? And just to give you an example, we can start off with something like an inbound control tower, right? Which is monitoring all your inbound shipments from suppliers. It's collaborating with your suppliers. And whenever there is a delay, it detects in real time and it raises an alert. right? So that's the first step, which can be enabled in a matter of few weeks, and it starts adding value to you. And then once you release value from this particular initiative, then you can fund the next phase of the project. So that way it becomes a self-funded project. And once you're done with the inbound control tower, then you can go to integrated planning, right? Where you are trying to figure out, hey, what's the impact of my delay, and what can I do to mitigate that delay, right? And then you go on to the next phase where you are automating, informing the customer, right? And taking some of these actions, orchestrating. So slowly you integrate with all your existing system.
Yeah.
So going in a step-by-step fashion, in a self-funded way is the answer to breaking down this decades-old problem, is what I would say.
So it's looking at it less from the perspective of the systems and the mechanisms, and it's more from the perspective of the journey. What is the customer journey? What is the operational journey? Putting it into the context of your business so that you're applying it appropriately. And then you understand how to start stitching things together, because you see how different things that you change or improve upon impact and improve outcomes.
Absolutely.
Got it. I think I'm getting it. All right. So, Kapil, let me move over to you again. At Signet Jewelers, what are you doing? How are you enabling connected intelligence? And I think the other question is it seems like you have to have a really good perspective of what's going on in your business and with your customers. So what's the role of data here?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think one of the important thing which we have realized is data is everywhere. Data is the new oil, what I call, right? We are data rich, but insights poor in most of the organization, right? And since 2020, there's one statistics which I was reading recently was that global human race has increased their data consumption and creation by 5,000%, right? So when you look at most of connected intelligences, people talk about internal to the organization, supply chain talking to your merchants, supply chain is talking to your financial systems and all that stuff. But one of the things which we have also realized is the external data is critical. So getting the data, the end-to-end inventory tracking, getting end-to-end shipment tracking or inbound shipments coming from the supplier is so critical these days. And Majaz briefly touched upon that if there is a delay, and these days delays happen due to supply chain disruptions throughout the world, right? If there is a delay, at least we are able to react immediately, being agile, being flexible, and able to basically go to a different option. Right. Or at the least, we can inform our consumers of the delay. That's what consumers are expecting, at least communicate with us in an open and transparent way. Similarly, we have also realized some of the other external data like traffic or weather or COVID was a great example, right? When COVID came, we have to predict the footfalls within our stores. Right. So again, a marriage of external and the internal data. Another one which we often lean upon is the social media sentiment analysis to understand how our consumers are actually reacting to our products. So in summary, the marriage of external and internal data with that whole connected intelligence platform I think is super critical to cater to your consumers in the best possible way, provide them the best experience, but also makes internally our organization into a much more resilient organization and how we react.
So you have to connect the data first to have the knowledge to then have the connected intelligence to move forward. Okay, all right. So Majaz, how do we put all of this together? How do we integrate all of this data, whether it's external, third party, public, internal? There seems like, again, another challenge, integration, constantly top of the list. And where a lot of companies are spending their money and focusing. So how do you do this?
Absolutely. So fortunately, technology is evolving at a very rapid pace.
Yeah.
Right. And we have technologies like delta sharing or clean rooms, right, where data from these various organizations can be brought in and shared in a safe and secure manner, right, and confidential manner, right? You don't want organizations to see each other's data as well.
Right.
So we use technologies like that. We integrate with external data organizations like Dun & Bradstreet, like AccuWeather, etc. Bring in their data as well, and in some cases we connect to publicly available data as well. like your Twitter feeds, right? TikTok feeds, social media feeds, and your port authority websites, right? We get live information from there. Bring all of this together in a common like data lake or a data fabric or data mesh, whatever you call it, right? You bring all of that together, and your AI and ML algorithms are working on top of this data to detect the anomalies and react to them in almost real time. So that's kind of the technology that we use behind bringing all of this data together.
So it really is a combination of thinking about how you bring forward that data, integrate that data, not just to build your models and train them and get the intelligence, but you have to be thinking about how that data is flowing and being taken advantage of when those models are deployed, and that intelligence has to actually do something now. Yeah. What are the most important challenges with AI and the supply chain currently? Is this helping?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think you briefly mentioned about it. That it's a journey, right? Yeah. So one of the things which from Signet's perspective and overall as an organization perspective, what we have realized is the lack of holistic approach to this, right? Yeah. So everybody does in isolation different things related to either AI-based or advanced analytics work. But one concept of whole connected intelligence is can I get a holistic approach, and what ties them together is the business outcomes, right? What is the business value you're trying to drive, and can I have a holistic approach to that? I think that's one thing which every organization needs to think through it and then connect the dots. The other thing which we have seen is the change management aspect and adoption aspect of AI-based use cases across the organization. And one thing which we have seen is that we need to really pick the use cases which drives the biggest maximum business benefits. People see the value and then become like sort of an self-indulgent process, right? One of the things which we have done is that for every use case which we pick has to have an actionable insight and needs to have the right metrics to track the outcome. Mm-hmm. I think that's super critical for us. Recently, we did digital twin simulation work for supply chain. So we picked up some use cases of supply chain. We built a digital twin, which is basically a replica of our use cases. And now we can actually simulate things where we really don't need to go through proof of concept in the pilots. One of the examples I wanted to share was how do you infuse more inventory productivity or velocity into the mix? And we simulated the most optimal sourcing logic, how we can pick the inventory for an order coming from the store. Mm-hmm. We could simulate all these things without actually doing this thing. Another use case which we picked up from digital twin simulation was recently we have a lot of stranded inventory within our DC. Mm-hmm. So we simulated how this stranded inventory can be pushed out of the DC into the store where you could actually sell them based on similar SKUs. So now this was a simulation which was created not by actually moving the product, but basically just based on the purchase propensity where it is actually going to sell. This was a $20-25 million inventory opportunity within a couple of months. So these are the things which we are seeing, that how we are reacting, how we are becoming more agile, how we are becoming more flexible and resilient towards the ask. So these are some of the challenges I think we really need to. So in summary, we need to have a holistic approach, we need to have the right change management approach, and we need to actually have actionable insights, and we need to really measure them. Otherwise, you will not get the value of all these things.
Yeah, it's those measurements that seem really important. I mean, we used to look at very minute KPIs, and that made us feel good as employees because we hit our own KPIs. But now when we're looking at business metrics, it's the needles that are moving for the executive teams and our C-suite and the board. Like, you have to show that you're affecting that as well. That's so it's if you're not measuring it, if you're not measuring the right thing, that's going to be really challenging. Majaz, how do we get around these challenges? How do we make that transition, not just technically, but even from a business perspective?
Absolutely, and I think I'll come back to your point around measuring, right, in my answer quickly. But first of all, I think the first challenge that Kapil mentioned is having a holistic approach, right? Mm-hmm. Having all of these AI, ML systems or models that you have in your entire end-to-end supply chain work in harmony with each other, right? Mm-hmm. So that's where connected intelligence comes in. It sits on top of your existing ecosystem and orchestrates, right? It's kind of a conductor for your orchestra that you have, right? And so that your supply chain starts singing in unison and starts creating music, right? So, so that's the first thing. Secondly, he mentioned change management. Change management is extremely important in this case, right? So first of all, what business need to do is start off with a roadmap, creating a roadmap of what's your most impactful use case with low to medium complexity, so that you go implement that, and as soon as you get that win, it energizes the organization, right? Second thing we need to do is involve the right stakeholders from day one, and there are two reasons for doing that. First, making sure that what you have designed is actually adding value to the organization and not theoretical, right? And once it is actually adding value, it gets adopted. It has a higher chance of getting adopted. And secondly, these right stakeholders will become your champions as you go into the journey. And then thirdly, you have to get the early adopters and start rewarding them, right? So those are some of the steps that can be taken to go around the change management aspect of it. And finally, on measuring, right, value tracking becomes extremely important. Create a mechanism to do value tracking before even the project begins, right? And then track your value and start reporting against it. Right? One of my management teachers taught me very early is what gets measured gets done, right? So create that thing and start displaying it everywhere in the organization, right? Like you have your organization dashboard, show how much value you are adding with these type of projects, right? And then that's how you go around all the three different challenges.
Seems like picking the project or picking the use case is important. And maybe just one follow-up question is, what's different about the use cases that we're choosing today with connected intelligence versus the way we looked at use cases in the past?
Yeah, I mean, I can answer that. One of the things what we have picked up is that it's the infusion of the business and the technology, right? You know, there are things which you could do in the past, which you could not do it in the past. Now you can do it with the technology basically helping us. Like this example which I was giving you with the digital twin, right? The simulation capability and the scenario planning capability of things which would take months, now you can actually do it in weeks, is actually an important game changer, right? Similarly, connecting the data between the organization, but also the external data, right? That's another game changer. And then putting customer in the between. So anything which you're doing, at least from a Signet's perspective, we take that customer-centric approach and then basically design everything around that. So for us, anything which doesn't touch consumer or customer is actually non-value add. And that's the way we look in most of our business cases, which we pick is like, how can we add value to the customer? How can we take out the cost out of the company? But at the same time, you know, we want to be more innovative, technologically advanced, so that the talent is also a problem, because labor issues are definitely coming into the world. So we don't need to get into the labor world. Mm-hmm. So those are some of the use cases, how we pivoted from the old school to the new school.
Yeah. I love the simulations. I feel like we're almost ready for the metaverse. A topic for another conversation. Majaz, what would you add to that?
Yeah, so the only thing I would add is, you know, in the old world, we used to pick use cases which were siloed. How do you optimize your transportation? How do you optimize your planning, right? Versus now, with the advent of AI, we are starting to think about end-to-end. And like Kapil said, when you think about your customer and have use cases which are customer-centric, you automatically become end-to-end.
Yes.
Right? If you want the product to reach the customer in time, then you have to start thinking from the supplier, start from supplier and go end-to-end that way.
Right.
So I think that's the change, going from siloed to thinking end-to-end.
Yeah, it's changing where the horizon is. It's one thing to say, well, I'm going to optimize my inventory, but out of context of where the demand is, what point is there to optimize your inventory at that point? No, really, really good point. So how does your organization operate differently now that you have AI in that supply chain? And I guess also trying to understand a little bit about, role support and the link and relationship between tech and business, and, how data and insight kind of fit into that. What does Signet Jewelers look like now on AI and connected intelligence?
That's a great question, and it's a transformation journey which we gone through and we're still going to go through, right? What we have to lean back again, how the retail industry is getting impacted, and which basically obviously helps us with the transformation. So again, in summary, we already know that we are going through a perfect storm of challenges, right? Record inflation, the consumers is changing, the behaviors are changing, the buying patterns are changing. The digital supply chain disruption is still going on, right? Now, in the grand scheme of things, when we started applying connected intelligence with the most business value driven use cases, what we have realized, our company and our organization has become more resilient. We can react faster, we are more agile, we are more flexible to give what the consumers are looking for, and at the same time, we are actually able to manage our costs also very well, right? Just to give you a couple of examples, right? So we recently, with the help of Tredence, we actually launched a bot, an RPA bot, which tracks loose stone inventory, which is like high value loose stone diamonds, which are in the network. So the bot actually tracks them and sends a message to our merchandising team before it becomes access on the book. So there is a return window, you have to return it back, otherwise they just sit on our books, and these becomes unproductive stones and becomes part of the inventory problem, right? So this bot now helps us track it, sends a message, and they're able to return them on time and basically managing our inventory. So again, this is a great example of how technology is solving a business problem, right? Other thing which we have done recently is we have launched automated data-driven models of 9 tiers of our inventory SKUs. These inventory SKUs are aged, stagnant, for some reason not selling. So now we apply advanced analytics on top of that, and we basically peel off the poor performers, pave the ways for the newness, we avoid the markdown situation. And recently, over the last 3 months alone, we were able to identify $78 million worth of inventory, which actually could be applied for the clearance rollup. Now, this is a game changer, right? How technology, connected intelligence, AI is sort of helping the business outcomes, right? It is helping react, but at the same time, the focus is always the consumer. So what is consumer looking for? Where is that demand coming from, and how supply chain can sort of support that? But now we are blending technology with business outcomes. So I think that's the key thing.
Yeah. It sounds like the business teams and the decision makers are also closer to their technology partners now, because if you're ruminating over a simulation and doing what if scenarios and planning, you have to be highly responsive in terms of what that model is doing or how the data is coming in as well.
That's fair. That's very fair that now the two teams work a little bit more cohesively, because we are all aligned based on that business outcome.
Right. Great. Then let's summarize this. This has been an amazing conversation, really interesting. Thank you so much. So connected intelligence is the need for the hour for retailers. And it potentially, can raise earnings by up to 2% and boost sales by $150 million and, reduce costs as well by, say, $50 million. And, that's for a $10 billion company. That's pretty significant. And that might only be one use case.
Right.
So you just, that flywheel can really start kicking in as you extend this out and connect even further in your organization. I think we're also seeing that connected intelligence, it's a mechanism for sort of the overarching intelligence. You talked about that orchestration earlier, and you pull out those business silos, you're increasing the collaboration across the organization, collaboration between the silos, collaboration between business and technology as well, and that's creating more responsiveness in our business and more flexibility in real time to adapt to changing behavior. So we learned a lot in the past 2 years, but we're able now to apply that in the next 2, 5, 10, maybe 30 years. or we'll come up with something new. And ultimately, connected intelligence relies heavily on our ability to take advantage of machine learning and artificial intelligence. And if you can put those into very strategic places within business areas and between our business silos, that's where that orchestration really starts to come into play. There's chatter amongst our bots, and that sharing of knowledge, it can be implemented in a phased manner. Just like we learn as we grow, our models are learning about our business as we're implementing them. And with each phase, it lasts just a few weeks. You're releasing value for the organization now. No more of these monolithic deployments waiting, 12, 18, 24 months.
Right.
Like, it's there, and it gives you, more fuel. Data's the new oil. Moving on to that next thing. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Any last words?
No, thank you so much, Michelle. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you both for
Thank you,
making the time. I think it was a very interesting conversation for sure.
Good. Fantastic.
Thank you.